Bryan Kohberger's story is one of hidden struggles and dark obsessions, a chilling transformation in the shadows of small-town America. Behind his pale stare and awkward demeanor lay a mind that grew increasingly fascinated with crime, violence, and control. His haunting journey could be summed up in a single question he seemed to be asking the world: do you see me now? To understand how Bryan Kohberger became the man who would shock the world, we need to rewind back to the beginning, to the childhood home, the family who raised him, and the early years that shaped the mind of an alleged killer. Bryan Kohberger was born on November 21, 1994, in Albrightsville, Pennsylvania, a small, peaceful town surrounded by forest and far from the hustle of the city life. His parents, Michael and Marianne Kohberger, were loving, hardworking people. His father worked as a maintenance technician and his mother as a substitute teacher at a local high school. Together, they raised Bryan and his two older sisters, who excelled in school and were described as well-liked by their peers. However, Bryan struggled to find his place. As a young boy, he was reportedly overweight, a fact that made him the target of relentless bullying throughout his elementary and middle school years. He was different, and kids picked up on that. One former classmate would later say, the constant teasing left scars, ones that would manifest in troubling ways as he got older. By the time Bryan reached high school, things took a dark turn. In fact, during this time, the Kohbergers filed for bankruptcy for the second time. Why is this relevant or even appropriate to bring in? Appropriate because the financial burden is stressful and unpredictable, often negatively affecting children in their formative years. Bryan would have been approximately 15 years old during this time, which coincides with the start of his digital identity. He allegedly authored a series of online posts and provided insight into his mental state. Using the username XR, he contributed to forums on Tapatalk, particularly those related to visual snow syndrome, which is a neurological condition that causes visual disturbances. In these posts, Kohberger described his struggles with mental health, including depression, anxiety, and a profound sense of detachment from reality. He described experiencing horrible depersonalization and feeling as though he was blank, with no emotion and nothing. He also mentioned having crazy thoughts and delusions of grandeur, which is just a fancy term for, I think I'm better, smarter, and more worthy than you. He even expressed a lack of interest in activities and constant thoughts of ending his life. In May 2012, Bryan was 17 years old. He produced a particularly concerning post. He says, "When I get home, I am mean to my family. This all started when the VS did. I felt no emotion, and with depersonalization, I can say and do whatever I want with little remorse." These posts, reportedly made between 2009 and 2012, have been linked to Kohberger through various identifiers, including matching usernames and corroboration from individuals who knew him at the time. One former classmate would later describe him during this time as the kid that no one wanted to sit with. This isolation Bryan experienced during his formative years likely played a critical role in shaping his perception, developing drug abuse, and even struggling with eating issues. Bryan's struggles became more apparent in high school. He was overweight, socially awkward, and often the target of bullying. Classmates recalled that he rarely defended himself, remaining silent or retreating inward. In my opinion, over time, this relentless teasing must have left a deep emotional impact on Bryan, as it would for any of us. Nick McLaughlin, a close friend of Bryan Kohberger, said that he was down to earth and overweight as a teen. When they started senior year, Kohberger was thinner than a rail and developed an aggressive personality, according to his friend. Over that summer, his outward appearance drastically changed. Friends suspected he was struggling with an eating disorder, possibly driven by a need to gain control. Eating disorders, like substance abuse, arises out of a need for control. Although both display out-of-control behaviors, the individual with the disorder feels they are in control, especially in childhood, when you have very little control in life other than what you say, what you take in, and what you put out. Bryan shed significant weight. Perhaps this symbolized his transformation from shedding the bullied, chubby boy off to becoming the lean, more unrecognizable, intense version of himself. But while the bullying may have lessened, the internal scars remained. Worst of all, I still, in my opinion, don't think he felt seen. There's something else. Around this time, his friends began noticing a shift in his personality, which took on a more troubling tone during this period. He began expressing strange, sometimes disturbing thoughts, and grew more withdrawn and distant. One former friend recounted how Bryan would occasionally bring up violent topics in casual conversations, the things that make others feel uncomfortable. Other friends discussed how he was obsessed with his image. One friend recalls that it felt like he was trying to reinvent himself. This reinvention didn't stop at his appearance. He became intensely interested in martial arts and weightlifting, perhaps to build himself into someone in control who could no longer be victimized. Bryan graduated Pleasant Valley High School in 2013 at 19 years old. When I was doing my research, I did find a gap from 2014 to 2016 when Bryan eventually enters college after getting clean from heroin. I will do a follow-up video diving into his alleged addiction and eating disorder to identify risk factors and provide an understanding of how teens and young adults need to have a sense of identity, self-worth, and control or agency over their future direction. When people feel powerless at this age, they have an increased chance of engaging in adult-like or dangerous behaviors to gain control, even if it means using out-of-control behaviors and distorted perceptions. Despite the red flags, Bryan excelled academically, showing a particular interest in psychology and criminology. This fascination with the human mind would follow him into his adulthood. Bryan's academic success eventually led him to DeSales University, where he pursued a bachelor's degree in psychology and a master's degree in criminology. At DeSales, Bryan's obsession with criminal behavior deepened. Professors noted that he asked unnervingly detailed questions about violent crimes, questions that went beyond mere academic curiosity. Dive into the DeSales questionnaire Bryan created and posted on Reddit, soliciting former felons to take part in his research that aimed at understanding how emotions and psychological traits influence decision-making when committing a crime. He questioned how the criminals approached their victims and prepared for the crime shortly before he graduated with a master's degree in criminology. I have to be honest with you guys, when I heard this, a huge red flag went up for me. As a recent doctoral graduate with over 20 years of experience teaching psychology at the college and university levels, I know that his survey was created too late in the research process to use for his graduation requirements. This is my personal opinion. However, as a researcher, I put in at least 30 to 40 hours a week for over a year on my dissertation research. I know an institutional review board process took at least 1 month for me to gain final approval before I could even move on to data collection and analysis. Then there's even more work to do after this step, which would have made it almost impossible, if not impossible, to use the survey results for a valid and reliable institutional study. Bryan graduated 1 or 2 months after posting this survey. Therefore, it is my opinion that the survey most likely had nothing to do with graduation credits and rather was used for personal insight. To top it off, I would not be surprised if we find out that DeSales University was completely unaware of and did not approve of the survey protocol. For me, the survey questions reveal a deeply troubled individual grappling with issues that eroded his sense of empathy and connection to the world. His fascination with violence and crime, combined with social isolation and mental health struggles, created a dangerous cocktail that went unnoticed by those around him. In hindsight, the signs were definitely there. A young man with a growing fascination for the criminal mind, a history of bullying and social isolation, and an inability to form healthy relationships. Let me be clear, this alone isn't enough to have predicted anything that he would be alleged of doing in the years to come. Bryan Kohberger's story is a chilling reminder of how a troubled mind can spiral into darkness. From a bullied child to an isolated adolescent, and finally an obsessive adult, one haunting question remained throughout time. Do they see me now? Unfortunately for the 4 beautiful victims, Kaylee, Madison, Zaina, and Ethan, he has now created an identity or formed an attachment that he was not able to do organically in life. May we continue to seek justice for the victims. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Could early intervention have made a difference, or were the signs too difficult to read? And most chilling, are others struggling silently, walking a similar path? What do you think about Bryan Kohberger's transformation? Was it nature, nurture, something else entirely? Remember, everyone is presumed innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. If you found this story compelling, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for deeper insights into true crime stories. Your support helps me continue to bring you these in-depth explorations. Until next time, stay safe.